Good afternoon, family. This is Trey getting in touch with you. Today we wanted to look at EPS. I've had a couple friends ask, how do I evaluate stocks better? And I think we need to start with some of the basic terminology before we can start breaking down stock analysis. Simply put, earnings per share is a quick way to evaluate the profitability of a company or compare the profitability of companies. Or another way to look at it is how profitable is a single stock of whatever company you're looking at. So what they'll do is take the net earnings minus dividends on preferred stock over the number of outstanding common shares. For simplicity's sake, let's say I start up a company, I don't know, street fighting company, and it's a publicly traded company, and 4 people buy the stocks in this company. In our last quarter of operating, quarter's 3 months, the company, fighting street people or something, makes $100 profit, and it's split between these 4 stocks. So each stock makes 25 bucks. Now, when you're looking in real life at different companies' EPS numbers, having a higher number doesn't necessarily mean they're doing better. And on the flip side, having a really low number doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad company. We have to remember when we're looking at these indicators, there are like strengths and weaknesses to each of them. And that's why it's really important to be kind of looking at a whole suite of these kinds of calculations so that you can get a good grasp of a company's health before you invest in them. Imagine I went to the doctor and he only measured the size of my biceps. He's like, wow, your biceps are, I don't know, whatever, how many centimeters that is. You're healthy or you're unhealthy. You know, that could totally be misleading. You know, like I might have just had my legs blown off in a war. If he just measures that, he's like, yep, you're good, man. But I die the next day. And on the other hand, I could be super duper ripped Mr. Universe or whatever. And actually it is a good representation of how healthy I am. So we need to take things in context and kind of take a step back. Don't take the EPS as this is the holy number that determines if a company's great or not. But remember that it has a specific role in helping us understand a company's health. As you can see here, here's a screenshot from Schwab and a little video from Webull. It's pretty easy to find the EPS numbers when you're looking at your brokerage's account. So one of the big factors that impacts the stock price is profitability. And if a stock is very, very profitable, more and more people will want it. And the more people want a stock, the more they're willing to pay for it, so the price will keep going up. So there are a couple of weaknesses or a couple of shortcomings to just looking at the EPS number. Number one is that there are kind of ways to fudge the EPS number. And companies will sometimes take advantage of this, especially if it relates to the officers getting bonuses based on a certain EPS number. And ways you can play around with that, as we learned in high school, is if you change the denominator of a number, basically gets bigger. So in our stock earlier of our street fighting company, we have 4 stockholders. If the company is like, hey guys, we want to buy back a couple of those stocks, so those are ours again. Now we've changed the denominator so that there's only 2 shares outstanding. So our EPS went from, when it was $25 per stock profit, now it's $50 per stock profit. So that didn't actually change the profitability of the company as a whole or the value of the company as a whole. It's just playing around with the numbers. So that's one thing you got to be careful of. And then the other thing you got to be careful of is that the EPS doesn't really take into account outstanding debt of a company. And so let's say in order for me to start up my street fighting company, I took out a loan of $1 million, and then I built an arena and got all these cool weapons and stuff. Cost me $1 million, and now I'm making $100 a month. Pretty garbage business if you ask me. But let's say I had a competitor who was more strategic and more efficient, and he used systems better, and he was able to make another competing company of street brawlers that's very similar, but it only cost him $1,000 to set this company up, and he's making the same $100 per quarter. Basically, his company is much more attractive when you just look at those numbers. Generally speaking, you don't want to be buying a company that just has like insane amounts of debt, but having a good EPS number doesn't necessarily mean that their debt is under control or anything like that. So let's take a look at some real world examples using really big well-known companies here. Here we have the Apple quarterly EPS going all the way back to 2005. Check it out, there's like 5 cents, 5 cents, 7 cents, 9 cents. Not insanely profitable, especially compared to now. We zoom forward all the way to 2020. Now it's kind of like $5 or $2.50, $4, looking down these numbers. Apple is known as being one of the most profitable companies for a number of reasons, but that's kind of, you can see the evolution of their EPS over the last 15 years. Here is Google going back to 2005, 60 cents, $1, $1.50, minus $4 in 2017, $13 in 2018, and then our last quarter here, $9.87. One of the ways you see these big minuses all of a sudden in the middle of nowhere, like we saw in 2017, is when companies, I don't know specifically for this case in 2017 with Google, but you might see a company like Tesla, it is like building huge factories around the world. Actually, let's look at Tesla. We see 2019 minus $4, 2019 June minus $2, 70 cents, 71 cents, 8 cents. So we see them kind of jumping all over the place, but they're spending ridiculous amounts of money building factories in China and now Germany and now probably other places in the US as well. And so you need to take those things into account as well. Here's another stock which I reviewed last week, General Electric. We see kind of a big variance, minus $1.20 starting back in 2017, minus 14, plus 7, minus 260, all the way up to today, 70 cents. And like I shared in last week's video, General Electric has some good stuff going on now. They're not about to revolutionize the world or anything like that, but I wanted to give you some examples here just so you can kind of see how those numbers bounce around. So again, in summary, the EPS just kind of gives us a snapshot at part of a company's profitability. Don't take it as gospel, don't take it as the most important thing, because it doesn't take into account a company's debts, and it might not take into account things like stock buybacks, which are very controversial right now, by the way, as the government's going in and saying, hey, we're gonna give you some money to get keep your company going so you don't have to fire people or go out of business. There's talk about changing the rules so that companies can't turn around and just use all this free cash from the government to just go and buy back a bunch of their stocks, thus raising their EPS. So there's talk about rules on restricting that, which probably is a good thing. So that's EPS. Hope that was helpful for you. Hope that will help you move forward in understanding a little bit more about stocks. Talk to you soon. Peace out.